is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the Afterparty Season 2, Episode 9, Isabel. In this episode, I don't know how to explain the fucking napkins. I don't, like, everything else I would be like, oh, Isabel, but the napkins. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. I just want to mention, like, in the little blurb here under the episode, I don't read those until I've already watched it in case it has, like, any sort of small spoiler. But it describes this style as a 50s psychological melodrama. And that the word melodrama definitely was what I was going to go with, but a psychological melodrama, I'm going to just type in and see what I come up with for titles of movies that are like this, because I don't know if I have ever seen one. And I've got to say that this show has made me really interested in just broadening my genres, because I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I am not that big a movie person. I find like movies can affect me so much that I sometimes resist watching them because they can really fuck my mood up for days. And if it's like a sort of a scary or tense sort of thing going on, it can like affect my sleep. Like I just tend to really carry what happens in movies heavily, and it's part of why when I do go to movies, I do popcorn flicks, I do big blockbuster shit, because those don't usually have the kind of like emotional punch that stays with me, and I can enjoy them and then sort of shake them off and go on with my life. So there are a lot of movies that I know are just like respected and cited as great examples of their, you know, the director's work, the actor, whatever. And I haven't seen most of them. So, all right. So Don't Bother to Knock, which apparently has Marilyn Monroe in it. The Bad Seed, I've heard that title. Vertigo, I've heard that one. Okay. Elevator to the Gallows. What a great name. But no, never heard of it. I'm just looking through these really quick. Oh, Rebel Without a Cause is considered one. Huh. A Streetcar Named Desire. Okay, I have seen that, but it has been at least 2 decades since I've seen it. Maybe more. Marlon Brando. God, fucking gorgeous. A monster of a person, but just beautiful. And East of Eden, I have heard of that. I think out of all of these, those are like the only ones that are really ringing a bell for me. The Bad and the Beautiful, I don't know if I heard of Bad. I've heard of Bold and Beautiful. But yeah, that's about it. Okay. I am really curious about watching some of these. I really want to restate, anybody listening who knows a lot about movies, I'm actually like in a group on Facebook for people who enjoy movies that I probably could also go to, and I may, to ask for recommendations. But if anybody listening wants to come into the Discord and suggest to me some movies for each of the genres that I've mentioned being interested in this season, noir, what was the other one? Noir was one of the ones that I was like, wow, I really haven't seen many of these. And then the romance, the like 90s romance. I haven't seen very many of those. So I'm down for it. So, okay, let's just get into Isabel now. Sorry, after 10 minutes of just talking about everything but the episode. This was really, really fascinating because it's so clear something is being fucked with that I genuinely don't know what to think now. When I said last episode that I expect whatever's going on with Isabel is somebody fucking with her and her taking it way more seriously than she should, I, at the time, felt like it was going to be like sort of a joke. The fucking with her was going to be something that was like a person who just likes seeing someone squirm, someone, especially in maybe Isabel's position, who she's got power over certain people, a very forceful personality, and maybe somebody just enjoyed sort of kind of humiliating her, you know? But after seeing this episode, I was really left wondering, is there genuine malice behind what's going on with her? Because the feeling for me, even in the scene that we will eventually get to with the two pills that look really different, but in our eyes as the audience at least, those pills look the same. And Edgar is insisting they look totally different. It's difficult to know because we're seeing it from her point of view, and in her point of view, they look the same. So the pills he's holding in the scene look the same because I believe it's meant to reflect her point of view. I don't know for a fact that those look the same in life. And if they do, then yeah, it really does feel like somebody is completely sabotaging her. And the conservatorship idea, I tend to think, sounds more like Hannah. This is my ultimate thing here. I think maybe Hannah is behind all of it. I genuinely do not know anything about, like, I don't have a good motive other than she wants money. And a lot of the reason for not having that motive is because we do not know where she's from still. We don't know who her parents are. She has been adopted and treated as one of theirs and sort of like humored in all of her strangeness in a really kind way, actually. And so to me, it feels as if she has had a lot of freedom and not been treated like a second-class member of the family just because she's adopted. It feels like she was indulged the way you would treat your own child. And, you know, with the money available to this family, like, they didn't stint with her. But because I don't know where she's from, I don't know if there's something that she could have found out that would make her feel resentment toward Edgar, or if there is something that, like, maybe came to the surface about the way that he considered Hannah a second-class family member, because he sees things in such, like, bald terms as you're not blood, so you don't count the same way. Or because, like, the question for me has been from the beginning if Edgar was the one that was supposed to be poisoned. It's a really impossible thing to say right now. And so there is a part of me that feels kind of like maybe it was supposed to be Isabel. And yet, if Isabel were to go into conservatorship, I don't know what that changes for Hannah exactly. So if she got Isabel under conservatorship and Edgar is taken out of the picture with death, maybe then she gets her hands on the whole fortune? And if so, she either didn't care that Grace was going to get fingered for the job, Or she doesn't love Grace and was setting her up, which I really, really don't want to be true. I don't want this to be a lie. Almost you guys wondering, is it possible she and Grace could have been in on this together? That Grace realized, I want to be with you. I can't marry Edgar. And they talked over what their future would be like if she didn't go through with it. And then they decided, let's bump Edgar off. And then we can, sail away into the sunset. Except I don't know how either of them could think they were going to both be able to get away with it. That's sort of why I'm going with Hannah doesn't care about Grace, because it just so clearly sets Grace up as the fall guy. I don't feel like if they were on this together, I don't feel like they set anyone else up quite enough to make it seem like this is the person who was really responsible. The only way that could change is if there's something that very, very strongly points to Sebastian coming up shortly. There is a whole reveal about what's going on in with the phone calls and everything a little bit later, which we'll get to. But anyway, I just wanted to share my hypothesis here, because the nature of what has been going on with Isabel points to somebody in the household. And that points to only Hannah, Sebastian, and Edgar. My instinct really is to blame Sebastian, but he feels like too easy an answer. So it's sort of why I was equivocating and saying maybe it's him and Hannah. But I don't know. I kind of feel like it would be really ironic if Edgar did it to himself and nobody poisoned him. Actually, that would be... Oh, is that it? Was it a terrible accident? That would be fucked up. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. Sebastian just feels too easy. And setting Grace up as the fall guy, I don't know. I want what's behind that to be more personal. Of when you get the reveal that they were setting Grace up, I want whoever was setting her up to be particularly shocking, and that would work for Grace or for Hannah. But anyway, that's my theory. So we start off this episode with the reminder of her saying, well, I know who killed Grace. And I didn't really mention at the last episode that after she says this, Grace just screams, what? And it's a hard cut that ends the episode. So when we start this one, we are picking up right after her having just told all of them this, which rightfully everybody is if you know who killed him, then why the fuck are you blaming Grace? Something that I really, really love about Isabel's whole character and the way that she has been written is that she has this gaslighty thing that she feels is being done to her, but actually is also something that she is doing to everyone around her. Because she, every time anybody shares with her that they're upset or that they think she did something really shitty, she reacts by telling them to calm down, don't blow this out of proportion. This, when they're how did you, how could you accuse her if you know who killed her? And she says, well, if I have somehow upset you, mea culpa. And this is something that is so real with a certain type of parent. And I do believe this would be the exact type of parent who would do this. I have only encountered this a little. And this is because I am not super confrontational with my parents about shit that they did to me. So, but this is like a classic move that I have heard from friends who have very different types of parents than I do, where they will either say like, you did blank, 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 and the parent will straight up just deny that that happened at all. Or they will say like, I don't remember that, in a way that feels almost like they're not denying it. They're just pretending they don't know what you're talking about. Or they do this where they immediately make you feel like the weirdo for having any sort of a strong reaction. Forgive me, I'm just adjusting in my chair here. So it just comes down to like, you know, I can't believe that you killed my dog. Oh my God, it was a mistake. It was an accident. And I told you I'm sorry. What more do you want me to do? Like that sort of immediately jumping to, you are being so demanding right now. How dare you, after I have already acknowledged, continue this conversation as if it's not over now. And I just really enjoy that about her. The fact that she is being gaslit, but is also always doing it to everybody. And just making it seem like folks being upset about completely valid shit is like just really unreasonable of them. You know, like everybody just chill for a second. So this is when Danner says, this is when I witnessed did you witness the actual poisoning? And she says, I know what I saw, which is so funny because she didn't actually see anything. She saw him coming toward her with cake, and they each ate a slice. She never saw him poison the cake. She never saw anybody else poison the cake. So saying, I know what I saw, isn't actually answering the question that Danner's asking. I love what she says. I know what people think of me. I'm just cold, haughty, intimidatingly beautiful. And I love how Hannah like props her cheek up on her hand and looks at her in a way that's almost like affectionate. Like, oh, look at her. Sebastian just looking really uncomfortable because he tried to seduce her very, very recently. So yeah, she is talking about how like, you know, it's been a difficult year. Mine is a classic story filled with suspense, paranoia, and a deep descent into madness. And I love her tilting her head ever so slightly. And then when we come to the flashback, her head is tilted the same way. And she has an actual handkerchief out. And this the whole setup here of the widow at the edge of the grave. You guys, this gravestone absolutely fucking slew me. And I tried to take a screenshot of it. And there's those fucking irritating blocks that Hulu can, or not Hulu. I think it's also Hulu though. But a lot of streaming services make it so that you can't screen record and then just like upload things to the pirating sites. And that also includes taking screenshots, which I think is really foolish because honestly, one of the best advertisements for shows is to screenshot and make memes out of them. And I feel like it's just gotten me interested in shows that I wasn't otherwise because I saw lots of hilarious memes and they're just, I get the theory behind it, but I think they're shooting themselves in the foot. Anyway, Alexander R. Minnows died as he lived, successfully. I absolutely fucking died. I don't know why that got to me so bad, but I was cackling. Like, a part of me genuinely wants that on my tombstone. I really mean it. I'm not being funny. I genuinely am like, that's like the ultimate joke. And I'm all about making people laugh. And I would love to have something on my tombstone that when people see it, they just sort of snort and go, that fucking bitch. I can't believe she put that on her tombstone. Like, that is really good. I wonder if that's protected by copyright. Probably I could just do it. Yeah, I love her. No, I'm fine. And he says, well, you're shivering. Take my coat. And she says, stop fussing. I want to leave now before I have to talk to any more senators' wives. And she puts on her dark glasses and sort of stumbles to the car. As her son says, she hasn't been this upset since she found out that the country club opened membership to Italians, but he calls them Italians, which every time somebody says Italians, I just assume they're bigoted. And I don't know if it's like because this is a sort of dated thing and that's why they did it, but there was even a moment in a recent episode of Poirot, the episode wasn't recent, I was watching it recently, and somebody is talking about Rhodes and their vacation spot and saying, I thought it was Greek, I had no idea it was Itai. And I had no idea what this man meant, and I finally realized, oh, Italian. I was just like, I was so lost for a sec. I was like, Itai? Is that like some, is that some kind of other country that I've simply never heard of before that is so sort of tiny? But anyway, so yeah, this whole thing is starting off fantastically. I'm super excited about it. We have them getting in the car and they have like a genuine, like 50s model. And then when they're driving, we have the effect of them in the car in the same way as was done at that time. So you have the sort of weird, like gently shaking car with the all the scenery in the background passing a little bit too quickly a lot of the time. I kind of wanted for Edgar to take his eyes off the road a lot more, because that was one of the marks for me when I was watching these movies, is the person who's behind the wheel is trying too hard to make eye contact with everyone else in a very unbelievable way. But instead we just get the, like, we're turning a corner and so we all sort of lean to one side, which I did like also. So then we get like a big hallmark of this, style, evidently, from what I'm seeing, is incredibly dramatic lighting. Like, we're talking heavy color schemes, extreme angles of light to throw like shadows that are as long as possible, and the color of it's so exciting. I love her fur trimmed, I guess it's really feather trimmed robe here. And she's sitting at her vanity, crying over him. Died in your sleep and I can't get any of my own. Edgar got me sleeping pills from our doctor. And she pulls out a pill. And I was thinking when I saw it, God, that looks a lot like the Adderall. I remember the Adderall being blue. Which, like, I don't know if any of y'all are familiar. And I'm sure there are different types. But, like, the Adderall that I have seen is never blue. Most pills aren't colored very much. And I always kind of miss it. Like, I really understand why in like cartoons and stuff, they're always done up in bright colors because it makes them look so much more distinct and interesting. And I wish that they were, because it would probably be a lot easier for me to tell things apart. Sometimes I forget what's in what hand. So anyway, she takes it and I'm thinking, like, that looks like the Adderall. And then we cut to her in the kitchen organizing the spices alphabetically. And I was like, oh, okay, so it was the Adderall. Like, that's what this is. And Edgar is passing and is just like, why are you awake? It's 4:30 in the morning. And she gets sort of defensive and just says, well, why are you awake? And he says, I'm up to do my morning laps before the markets open. And here, it feels like he's genuinely concerned to me, which is sort of like the fun thing about the episode is the way that it speeds up, or not speeds up, but begins to really sort of like emphasize Edgar as a sinister figure, which I imagine is probably the way it goes in a lot of these films as well. Somebody starts off seeming like they're an ally, a friend, and then as things go on, you begin to wonder, are they really? And so here he seems truly to be like, Mom, are you okay? And then we have the scene with him and Hannah talking about his cryptocurrency. Hannah's outfit, you guys. Oh my God. She's got like these thigh highs on and this, I think it's like a corduroy dress that has like a double breasted front. It's really beautiful. But they're talking about cryptocurrency and she's just sort of in her own head. And when they're like, Mother, she says that, well, I don't like it when you guys talk politics. And they're like, we were talking about cryptocurrency. I don't like fads, toaster ovens, slinkies, Michael Bublé. Please make me a drink. Isabel, you have one. It's in your hand. And then there's like this really dramatic music as she lifts it and realizes it's there. And I really like, what I'm wondering is if she is going to play it as if she's been being straight up poisoned, when maybe you're just really not supposed to mix booze and Adderall the way that she is, and it's just fucking up her short-term memory. Like, it could be something as simple as a side effect of the Adderall is causing her to misremember things. But this is sort of like the effect of a lot of moments in this episode, is her sort of staring off into space and people being like, is she okay? And her imagining what they're saying around her, or hearing something and misattributing it, the intent, whatever. And I couldn't help but think that I really recognized some of my grandmother's like tics and behavior in this episode. And I realized that she probably grew up watching movies like this and like took on some of the mannerisms and stuff, because we do that, right? Like, I know I do. I have allowed media to have way too big an influence on essentially every aspect of my personality. Let's be honest. That's part of being like not neurotypical, I think, a lot of the time. So I'm sort of looking at it and thinking like, man, I think my grandmother, first of all, I know that woman was not neurotypical. She didn't, but I did. But yeah, my grandmother, guys, I used to sort of like, me and my mom would sort of make fun of her, not to her face, but she had a very like hand to the head sort of martyr thing going on that was truly hilarious. She was dead serious about it. But she would go about it in this way that always just felt ridiculous. And I stand by laughing at her. I do not feel bad about it. And just seeing this, I was starting to be like, oh man, maybe some of the way she behaved makes sense. I love when gin thing, she tries to say it's gin. I don't like gin. Yes, you do. You drank it every day when you were pregnant with Edgar. And he says, you told me your safe word with Dad was Seagram's. Oh my God. So the sleeping pills, she's continuing to take those. And eventually she's like wandering around the house at night, again with her like handkerchief, hair totally done, bright red lipstick, you know, it's like the middle of the night. And she hears Edgar on the phone saying, I can't have a personal assistant with braces. It's a sign of weakness, which is amazing. I really don't want him to have said that because it's a shitty thing to say, but I kind of want him to have said that because it's truly a wild thing to say as well. And she's hearing like music, like children singing. And I love when she comes in and she says, "Can you turn down the music?" And he says, "Mother, there is no music." And then it goes away and she goes, "Well, now there's not." Like he's done this on purpose. I am trying to imagine what could have been done to make her hear music when he couldn't. And the only thing I can think is that somebody managed to put a little speaker like on her person in her robe pocket or something and play it very softly. The only other option for any of the, like, explanations for what's happening is maybe her doctor doing it, which he hasn't been enough of a character for me to think he's the murderer, and it wouldn't be a satisfying ending because we do see him in this episode a couple times from her perspective, but like literally I don't think anybody else ever talks to him. I think she's the only person that we actually meet him. And then we find out about how her husband died, and apparently she said he died in his sleep, but she says, yeah, he fell asleep flying his plane while his passengers screamed and plummeted to a fiery death from the sky. I absolutely cannot that this woman is so melodramatic, and then she just says this incredibly dramatic thing in like this offhand, yeah, yada yada sort of manner. Girl, how did you not milk that for all it was worth? Oh my God. So anyway, she looks over at Hannah and she says, "I'm making a little casket for Roxana." And my friends, I am really starting to be like, feel like this Roxana thing is its own mystery. I don't know, Hannah. I just got my eye on you, girl. I just do. I don't have as strong a suspicion of her as I did of Jasper. Jasper, I was fucking sure. Like, if it turned out to not be him, I would have been delighted, but I would have been very surprised, and you'd really need to explain some things to me. I was pretty solid on him. I felt like there were many beats in his episode that I was like, this is what's happening here. This is bullshit. Like, I was able to call it. I don't feel that way this season. Hannah is the one I am most suspicious of. But I by no means feel solid because there's no real motive that I can understand. You know, I can't help but, especially what's so weird is that I don't feel like I have a good sense of Edgar because everybody tells the story and makes Edgar into a totally different person. And so the motive would change depending on how much their version of him was true. Sebastian makes him like really cutthroat and cunning in a sort of cruel way. I didn't get that energy from him. Grace makes him like unintentionally romantic, which felt a little bit more true. I feel like Hannah painted him in a pretty good light as being like kind to her and, never treating her like she wasn't related or anything. His mother was sure that he was gaslighting her in order to get his hands on her money. And that's his mom who believes that. But I mean, I'm trying to think if there was anybody else's POV where he came off as looking really terrible. The only other one is Travis. And that wasn't even like a personality thing. It was because Travis thought he had figured out what Edgar was up to. And so he assigned, he's a bad man due to his business dealings. But Edgar never actually did anything shitty to Travis that we saw. So I just tend to really err on the side of Edgar being a better person than he seemed to be. Or than he has been shown to be by certain POVs. And the fact that there were like shell corporations that were being used to inflate the value of the stock, it would make a lot of sense if Sebastian wanted Edgar out of the way to be able to do this like short sell thing, because otherwise he was going to lose everything if he invested his own money in it. Right? And okay, so now I've talked myself into it being Sebastian, I think. I've been suspicious of Hannah, and I still like I am a little, but the more I talk it out, the more it makes sense if it's Sebastian, especially when he says, if you can't beat the house, you have to become the house. He says it again this episode, and that just really feels like what he's trying to do. Like, he is trying to full on take Edgar's place. You know, he's actually imitating his voice. Like, it's gotta be Sebastian. It has to be. And it would also make sense how he was able to pull off a few other things despite not being where he was supposed to be. Or despite being where he says he was, because he had two other dudes on the property to help him. We know these guys were actually there because we've seen them from a couple points of view. So he had folks who were backing him up and able to do stuff while he had a very solid alibi off somewhere else. And I'm really curious what happened to those guys at this point. Where are they? Because I just can't help but feel like Sebastian would throw those guys under the bus. Like, you know, basically use them for the evening and then just fucking call the cops and have them picked up. And he would never lose a minute of sleep over it. Okay, I'm so sorry, you guys. I know that I haven't gone over this episode like bit by bit, but I think everything I'm talking about is really like relevant, so it's fine. And there's this moment here, you guys. I have never felt so seen in my life. Isabella says, what's important is that I was coming in undone in front of Edgar and Hannah, my sweet odd bird. And I mean, I value her opinion above anyone's. And she stops and turns to her and says, wait, you do? You never told me that before. How would I? Just sort of like you just did, but I'm not telling you. I'm telling them. I mean, what would you want me to do? To tell you I care about you to your face while we're alone? And she says, that'd be really nice. And she just says, no, that's absurd. And then turns away. You guys. Oh my God. I could not stop laughing. This is exactly how I feel. And I know it's fucked up. I have been working on it, and like I actually managed to write how I felt about Rashawn for her birthday this year for the first time ever, because she means so much to me. Like, you guys don't understand. Rashawn is like, if you could have, she's like my platonic soulmate, and essentially I consider her like my platonic wife. She is so important to me that anytime I try to imagine what would happen if she was not in my life, if something happened to her, I like can't even like touch it. I can't even think about it for more than like a second before I start to go, okay, I'm freaking out. Nope, we're not going to talk about that or think about that or go anywhere near that. And yet I have tried to tell her a couple times on the show, like while we're talking about what's important to us, and I literally couldn't say anything meaningful other than like, I love you, you're my best friend, like, that's not, you know what I mean? So anyway, I just really, really felt this. It's like the more I feel about somebody, the less likely I am to say anything to them about it, because I know I will just completely break down. And I don't want to do that. I don't like it. So I'll tell people how I feel about them if I like them in a way that I find manageable. But if they really are like core kind of family to me, it's just really hard. It's really hard for me to do. Anyway, and of course, this is when fucking Ulysses says, have you considered talking to a therapist or perhaps a priest? I know a wonderful shaman in Istanbul. He's also an exceptional close-up erotic magician. I really appreciated that eventually, and he says, what makes the magic erotic? I'm a little curious. And Danner says with total like dedoy a tone to her voice, he does dick tricks. And Ulysses just fist pumps in the background to confirm. He doesn't answer. He doesn't even make eye contact. Like, he just, oh my God, that was well done. So, I love this, you guys. Where are the olives? We can't have a luncheon without the olives. But eventually, when Edgar comes in, even though it seems like she's being ridiculous, one of the first things he says is, where are the olives? And I just loved that little joke. But this is the scene where she meets Grace for the first time. And it really seems like she is genuinely delighted with Grace. Like, there's no sense of aloofness, of coldness. She is really like, oh my God, look at her. And I love how every time we see Grace, like, meeting people for the first time, she's in a similar kind of short A-line pink, like fluffy sleeved, like she's always in something hyper feminine, but they're all really, really different styles. And I would really like to just see the lineup of the costumes for everybody from episode to episode and how what they were wearing changed depending on the POV, because I think that would be so much fun as a costume designer to be like, okay, I want Grace to be wearing a really feminine pink dress in every scene, but you have to change the style, obviously, from era to era or genre to genre. What a spectacular assignment. Like, that would just be a really good exercise in school to demonstrate your design abilities and your understanding of genres and your understanding of, like, period fashion. Like, there's just, you could test a lot with that, you know? So yeah, this is when, you know, she says, it's such a delight to meet you, Gail. And Grace immediately sort of freezes up, and he comes up to her and says, I told you her name is Grace. No, you said at Scrabble that night. And it turns out like she has this distinct memory of what he said at Scrabble, and then the pieces on the board actually saying Grace when she goes and looks at them, because for some reason their like Scrabble game is still out. I love that her letters spell out crazy AF, actually. But if somebody else is fucking with her, how could it go wrong at this game when it's just the two of them? The Gail Grace thing, I wouldn't give so much credence if it weren't for the napkins. And it all depends. Are the napkins a result of her gaffe here? The fact that she misremembered, it was a genuine misunderstanding, and somebody took it and ran with it because they overheard this moment? Or did they somehow set her up from the start with the game as well? I don't know how they would even do that. I don't know how she can have that memory and have been playing Edgar, unless she was playing that game with Sebastian. But no, Edgar says like he was playing with her. So I don't know. Was Edgar fucking with her? Like, I don't know, guys. But yeah, it shows him like her name is, and he spells it out, and it says Gail, but I like, how much could she misremember? That's a distinct memory to have wrong. And at this point, Edgar accuses her of embarrassing him on purpose. And she tries to play it off as Gail Grace, what difference does it make? Nobody cares. And she comes in and says, well, I care. And Hannah says, I care too. Of course you do, Grace. And, again, I don't think that Isabel intended to come off as shitty as she did, but she's attempting to really downplay something that she thinks is like psychologically wrong with her. So it comes off as her minimizing an incident that is genuinely frightening to her and just seems rude as fuck to Grace. This is when Edgar calls her, "You are madder than a mad hatter at a hat haberdashery." And they wind up saying that a couple of times. So then Hannah says, "The sword you ordered is here." And this is the beginning of a few deliveries that arrive that were allegedly ordered by her. I really feel like I want to put this on Hannah, but it does have a weirdly Sebastian sort of feel to it. I don't know. Purchased by, sent to. And she says, I have no memory of it. But she takes the sword and later the whole suit of armor. Oh, God, you guys. Is it possible that the person who murdered Edgar used the suit of armor to hide? It holds a person inside. That sounds insane and like really, really difficult, but also that could do it, I guess. Like, I'm just trying to imagine having her like think she bought these things is a great way to gaslight her, but also you could have a dual purpose and be doing this to fuck with her and also getting things that you need for your operation into the house. I genuinely don't know. That's an interesting thought. Okay, got my eye on you, suit of armor. So then we have her moment in the bathroom with Hannah where she says, get over it. But it turns out she was saying it to herself in the mirror. And poor Hannah is just over there like saying, I'm having a really hard time and feeling totally abandoned by her as she just walks out saying, get over it. So she decides that she's just going to give into the goofiness of her crumbling mental state. And in this amazing, like, floofy dress, she's outside jumping on the trampoline. And Edgar is just like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, you keep buying shit that you don't remember having ordered. And I think it's time that we discuss conservatorship. And then she begins to really slowly collapse. It's so great, you guys. We see her ordering the napkins, and she types in Grace. And then Dr. Schoolkind. Oh my God, this guy. She insists that she feels great. She, doesn't want this whole thing. And I love this. And she says, how are you and she looks at her hand, 3 children and 0 pets. And he says, just fine, with a look of real, like, my impression is, this is a woman who never, ever asks anybody anything about themselves. And her doing this is more suspicious than not. But this is when Vivian comes up and shows her the, like, Gale napkin. Oof, you guys. Brutal. And she's just like, what the fuck? So eventually she stalks out of there. She has her run-in with Travis. I love when he's just like trying to be like, oh, the part you're playing. Oh, old lady who doesn't know what's going on. And she just loses it and fucking slaps him, which is great. And this is when she says he was trying to do a conservatorship so that he could get my money. And as far as she is concerned, it's like open and shut. We then jump to the moment outside where Travis tells Sebastian that he knows all about his little scheme. And Sebastian just admits it, which I really kind of wondered if Travis weren't using his phone to record him or something at that point, because it just seems like the sort of thing he'd do. I feel like if anybody is going to go the extra mile to do kind of too much when it comes to questioning people, it's going to be Travis. So, yeah, this whole interaction, it's very funny because, like, it sounds like what he's saying when Sebastian begins to reply. Sebastian says, wow, that's amazing. And you think he's going to say, everything you just said is wrong. But instead he says, apart from the pronunciation of Bucephalus, everything you said is actually exactly correct. I think he was recording when he pretended to take a call. I think that's what's going on, that he pushes record on his phone when he's pretending to call his mom. So then we get the fucking scene where he tries to seduce her. It's so awkward. You immediately understand like what it is about her memory that she thinks is being tested here, but that's super not what's happening. And then she chases him out with the sword. I love when he's like, is that a samurai sword? And she says, you're not allowed to call it that now. Or she just says, you can't call it that anymore. And when it comes back to the present, everybody is really like grossed out about this like sex scene. And she just says, oh God, you're all such prudes. I mean, he gets to have erotic close-up magic and I don't get anything. And I really appreciated that because really it feels like the gross out quality is coming from the fact that she's older. And if it weren't for that, then everybody wouldn't be such a shit about it. And I was like, you know what? I really do want you to call them out. Thank you. So finally, the morning of the wedding, I was walking on a knife's edge. And this is when she finds out that the pills she's been taking aren't Adderall. And it's interesting the way that she talks to Grace here. She's putting down the hairpin, and from Grace's position, she was like, you better fucking sign this. But instead, the way that it comes out from her point of view, God forbid if he lost all of his money with that idiotic digital Ponzi scheme, then his literally poor bride would be left with nothing. And she says, word of advice, it is important that you sign this. Regardless of what happens between you and Edgar, you get $1 million. So she was genuinely attempting to help. And Grace in the present is like, oh my God, you were trying to help? And she's like, yeah, you were family and we look out for each other. And she says, you're a Minnows now. And Grace says, I did keep my last name though. And she just has a moment of just like, I'm going to need a minute to process that, which is, yeah, that makes sense. So then the whole thing with the pill, and I've already gone over me not really knowing whether to believe that the pills are identical, but she pretends to believe that they are. Then we have the whole thing with this speech where she, this is truly one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever sat through, but it thankfully didn't veer enough into cringe that I couldn't watch it, which I thought it might, but she overdoes the drama so much that it's not cringy. It just kind of comes full circle back around again. So she puts a star on her speech, but then she winds up with a different speech. And the whole point of the star on it is to prove that like somebody's trying to sabotage her. But when it comes down to it, she is on the stage, or she's got the floor, I guess is a better way to say it, ready to give her speech, and she opens her bag, which Edgar had taken from her at a couple points, and her speech isn't in there. So she decides, I have to read this speech because either I read this and sound crazy, Or I tell everybody, this isn't my speech. My speech had a star on it. Somebody is setting me up, and she sounds fucking crazy that way. So she's just like, I was really in a no-win, so I just had to go ahead and read what it said, and it turned out to be the lyrics to Bop by Hanson. And you guys, I swear to God, what a genius fucking move. Oh my God. I can't wait to rewatch this with Owen. I just love it so much. It is so fucking strange. Anyway. So this is when Travis says, I thought Edgar was trying to pull an exit scam. You fake your death, steal the money. But now I think I'm on to the real grift. Here's the verdict, Paul Newman. It seems to me that Edgar was inflating the value of Bucephalus by investing his own assets through shell companies. And now here you are, scrambling to sell it all off because you know that the word is going to get out that he croaked, and then his little coin will be worth less than MoviePass. And MoviePass is back. Did you guys know that? They're making a comeback. I don't know how, because for those who aren't in the know about MoviePass, it was really quite a saga. But anyway, yeah, this moment, I really think he's recording on his phone. Apart from your pronunciation of Bucephalus, that was entirely correct. Very impressed. Not that it matters. And he says, of course it matters to the people who trusted you. And this is when he says a little word of advice. The house always wins. If you can't beat the house, you have to become the house. And this, he comes forward to Travis as he says it and yanks on his suspenders before walking away. And I really thought Travis was going to have a boner. And he does say to himself, that was awesome. But I kind of feel like that was awesome is supposed to seem like, oh, I really got into this confrontation. But what's happening is that he can't believe he got this dude to admit it on tape. That's my guess. Okay, so that's like, so then we have the cake scene where he gets up and it feels like he's really confrontational about not taking the bao bing because he is wanting to poison his mother with the cake. She switches the plates behind his back and he winds up eating the poison that was intended for her. And so later on, they talk it through because she's fully willing to take this like on herself. And Anik points out, and I love the reaction to everybody who they were hoping this was sewn up and that, you know, we've got our answer and we don't have to keep pushing this. But instead, everybody like hears him go, hold on. And they all go, ugh. And I just, yeah, that makes sense. I would probably also be that way. The timing for when that poison would have been ingested and when he started having his hallucinations doesn't work out. The hallucinations start within like 15 minutes. And he had eaten the cake about an hour and a half before it happened. His hallucinations began. So eventually she gets to the part where she's like, I started to wonder if I had imagined everything. And then we see her like going into the closet in that scene where it looks like maybe she has caught Zoe when Zoe took the teapot. And she stops after like running into the closet and realizing there's nobody there and sees a box on the floor. And I love that the name of the place she got it for is Dial P for party, because Dial M for murder is, I am going to put, like, hazard a wild guess, a psychological, like, melodrama. But yeah, in there is the box of corrected napkins, which I fully think she was meant to find. I feel like this has to sort of underline everything. And somebody planted them in Edgar's room to make it seem like he was the one hiding them from her. But yeah, this has to be Sebastian. It's gotta be. I really appreciate that she gets vindicated on this one particular thing, though. Like, it was just such a shitty moment, and the whole, like, story and all of her perspective on things, it wouldn't make her seem that much less shitty in a lot of ways if you weren't actually watching her POV and seeing how genuinely, like, mortified she is that she's offended Grace. But seeing this, that she didn't fuck the napkins up, is just like a basic fact that really just sort of, you know, kind of, I don't know if it fully shows that she meant well, but at the very least, it's something to support her story that's, like, tangible. And Love and Grace says, I can't believe I almost married this guy. And Hannah says, you did marry him. And she just says, oh, yeah. So then here comes Sebastian. What's going on? Isabel killed Edgar. Really? Huh. And yeah, no, she didn't. We realize that this timing doesn't work out. And once they realize the timing doesn't work out, the cops arrive. Which, you know, Sebastian freely owns up to the fact that he called them. And when they come in, the dude who comes in, who's like the sheriff, appears to be an old friend of Isabel's. I don't know. But immediately when he says, I hear there was a murder here, she says, yes, and the bride did it, and points to Grace. And immediately Grace just says, oh, come on. And that is the end of the episode. So I thought that was a really good ending. One episode left. I am going to go with it having been Sebastian, but I still have my eye on Hannah a little bit. So we'll see. The last episode, too, is not just Zoe. It's Zoe and Vivian. Vivian and Zoe. Sorry, forgive me, Vivian. And that we haven't seen, like a duo POV. So I'm really interested to see what that's going to look like. And the thumbnail for it almost looks like either sort of 80s music video, or it's giving kind of glamour shots. Like, I don't know what we're in for here. So that should be really fun. And then I'm going to be done with this series, and evidently they aren't renewing the show, which sucks. I really thought maybe we could do another season, but did not get picked up again. I'm bummed about it. All right, guys, thank you again so much for listening. I really, really hope you enjoyed the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.